Hello and welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing. I'm Aidan Macdonald and today I'm joined by Ryan McGinlay. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Obviously, plenty to talk about based off what's happened in the last 24 hours across three sort of different versions of Celtic. First team, youth team, and women's team. So that will be quite good in terms of variety. Obviously, before we start, as always, I would like everybody to just take a wee look at the ticker tape going down the bottom. It's the opportunity to subscribe to the Celtic Way website and support top quality football journalism for the club that you all love. The opportunity to do that is by visiting www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. The current deal we're running, it's £4 for 4 months worth of access. As a result of that, you'll be able to look at things such as on the website today, like Tony Haggerty's match report from the Youth Cup final, the eventful Youth Cup final last night that I'm sure we'll come on to discuss. There's a tactics piece up from one of our contributors, Alan Morrison, discussing Carol Starfelt's sort of underappreciated performance in the Scottish Cup semi-final. Also, going into the summer, there'll be scouting pieces, which will be very interesting coming into the transfer market. Everybody always enjoys them. And there'll be interviews from Tony and columns and people like Kevin McKenna. So get yourself involved in that if you haven't already subscribed. Once again, the link to do that is in the description of this video. It's www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And of course, the Celtic Way morning briefing is continuing to be sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. SENECA are the number one hair transplant company in Europe and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about Seneca via the links in the description of their video. If that interests you, their TikTok's down there, their Twitter, the link to the actual website and their YouTube. So, Ryan, it's been an eventful 24 hours in terms of Celtic news, hasn't it? I think probably given it's in the title to this video, the first thing to maybe come to is the Scottish Cup final. Obviously, we know Celtic did release a statement, as did Inverness, but before we go into that, what was your sort of initial news, seeing it was going to be a 5:30 kickoff?
I think it was a bit of a mixed one, to be honest, because although maybe from a personal point of view, a 5:30, you're out at that time, 5:30. It's a game under the lights. But I think if you look at it sort of the bigger picture, I mean, it was okay. The 5:30 kickoff for me would be okay. But if you look at it in the bigger picture, you think about the fans that are travelling down, and more importantly, the fans that are travelling back to where they're from after the game, then that could be a bit of a problem for those supporters, especially for the Inverness fans. So it's one of those ones. It all depends on what your situation is, or what sort of travel you make with regards to the final. But it's fine for me, but it might not be fine for other people. So it's one of those ones where I'm stuck in the middle, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Ryan. I think sort of the general consensus is that fans who are travelling, whether it be from the Highlands, from an Inverness perspective, or Celtic fans, that are maybe coming over from Ireland or other parts of Scotland outside of Glasgow, the general consensus does seem to be that it's maybe not ideal for them. Obviously, this is not the first time we've been faced with a 5:30 kickoff this season. The League Cup semi-final against Kilmarnock and obviously previous iterations of that fixture over the last few years have tended to be 5:30 kickoffs, and I think you make a good point in that from maybe your eyes perspective, people that are sort of living within that Glasgow postcode, it is good, if you're out and you're going to the game, etc. At that time, it's maybe something a wee bit different you wouldn't usually be used to. But I think when it comes to the Scottish Cup final, there is a traditional aspect of it always being a 3 p.m. kickoff. That's the way it's been pretty much the majority of the time. And the fact that they're differentiating away from that, I'm sure we'll come on to discuss the reasons that have been speculated why that's the case, is, in my opinion anyway, and not really the best look for the Scottish game. And it's your showpiece fixture at the end of the season, the one that not just fans that are involved in the fixture look forward to, but I'd imagine a lot of neutrals probably are enjoying. They always enjoy tuning into the Scottish Cup final, and the fact that it's now moving away from its traditional slot is not the best look for me from the SFA. So obviously Celtic did release a statement yesterday. I did Inverness, but they were both quite similar in terms of what they said, but I'll just read out Celtic's briefly here. Celtic said, "We're hugely disappointed that the Scottish Cup final has been moved from its traditional 3 p.m. slot, something we don't believe was necessary or is in the best interest of both sets of supporters. Additionally, there was no meaningful consultation with Celtic on this matter in terms of assessing the many issues affecting supporters attending the match, something which is also extremely regrettable. Now, that is quite a strong statement from Celtic. They're making clear they're not happy about it, which I think, as I was saying earlier, is a sort of general viewpoint that most of the fans seem to be sharing. The fact that they're basically saying they didn't really receive proper consultation, that the game was getting moved to that time, and Inverness said pretty much the same thing. I can't help but think that is another bit of poor form from the SFA, to be honest, Ryan. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, and it's not the first time that we've sort of made those remarks with regards to the SFA before, so it is disappointing. It seems as if Celtic and Inverness respectively have both been pushed aside because the broadcasters want a specific kick-off time, which is not a good look for the Scottish game. You're trying to separate it from other games, maybe down south or elsewhere, and instead we're playing second fiddle to them. It's not the best look. This is our showpiece game. People that want to watch that game will tune in to watch the game regardless. So I think a 3 p.m. kickoff would have been a perfect time for both clubs to sort of work with and work towards. So yeah, it is disappointing from that perspective. I wish the SFA would have more of a backbone with regards to these things and not give in so easily to broadcasters if that is the case.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we are speculating on that perspective, but that's the sort of what the reports have been suggesting, that it's to do with not wanting to clash with the FA Cup final between Man U and Man City. Obviously, look, I know there will be interest in that game as well, but from a Celtic fan's perspective, a Scottish football fan's perspective, which we obviously all are, as are the people in the comments here, that's not really in the back of your mind. That's not really the front of your mind, when it comes to this day on the 3rd of June, you're wanting to be involved in and watch the Scottish Cup final because it's with your team involved in. It's a showpiece game in the league that you're mostly following. Obviously, the FA Cup final, like I say, will be a good game, two good teams, but it does feel that once again Scottish football sort of been put to the side for the English game, doesn't it?
Yeah, and for Celtic fans and Inverness fans, that'll be the game that's on in the background as you wait for your lift to the game, basically. It's just the way it'll work. If it does stay a 5:30 kickoff, I know there's been sort of rumours about them trying to get it changed to a 1 o'clock kickoff. I don't know how true that is at this point, but for Celtic fans and Inverness fans, that'll be the game that's on in the background while we wait for the main event to happen at 5:30. So yeah, it's disappointing that the Celtic game will have to be later, but if that's the case, then I guess we're just going to have to adjust to it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you touched on the potential discussions about the game being moved to a different time, maybe slightly earlier, the 1 o'clock kickoff. I don't personally see that. I feel that they've made a decision now. They're already taking a bit of flack for it. I don't think they're going to change it again and sort of bring it back into the headlines just based off how the SFA have dealt with things in the past. It's more or less usually once the decision's made, that's it type thing. But yeah, it's obviously one we will keep an eye on because it's still a few weeks away from the Scottish Cup final, but it does not put a dent in it because it's also going to be hopefully a really good day from a Celtic perspective. But it's just once again there's a wee sort of change in there that it feels like there didn't have to be. But yeah, well we'll have to keep an eye on it and just see how it gets on. So talking of cup finals, obviously last night Celtic under-18s took on Rangers under-18s in the Youth Cup final at Hampden. I think it was a game that would have always been a bit of interest in, the fact it was live on BBC Scotland, a match between, both Glasgow sides. There's always going to be people wanting to see that and see how it's going to pan out, but it ended up being an 11-goal thriller, Ryan. I don't think anybody probably expected the scoreline to be quite like that, did they?
No, absolutely not. It was an absolute joy to watch from start to finish. All the goals going in. It seemed as if the game had everything: red cards, penalties, goalkeeping mistakes, absolute screamers when it comes to the last goal in the game, or an audacious sort of attempt that went in. Yeah, it was an absolutely brilliant game. Two sides that were really, really going for it. It was a joy to watch, and it seemed as if it was a perfect game in perfect surroundings at Hampden Park, and it seems as if everybody's talking about it online, which is absolutely brilliant, and that's good exposure for the under-18s game too.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It was phenomenal exposure. Obviously, I believe there wasn't fans actually at the match. It was just like players' families and that, and other representatives from the club. But I think you've seen it when Celtic scored, that all the wee kids out there supporting Celtic were going absolutely crazy, which was always good to see. In terms of the game, as I mentioned, it was very back and forth. I was having to take quite a few notes during the match just to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So we're just sort of briefly running through exactly what planned out. So Rangers went 1-0 up. and then a Celtic winger, Mitchell Frame, he made it 1-1. Then midfielder Corey Thompson scored a goal very quickly after that to put Celtic 2-1 up. Rangers then equalised. Then, and we're still in the first half here, Daniel Kelly made it 3-2 to Celtic. And then Rangers scored just before half time, so into the break it was 3 each. Rangers then went 4-3 up via a penalty going into the second half. And then Mitchell Frame's cross led to one of the Rangers players putting the ball in their own net to make it 4 each. Then it went into extra time, which Daniel Cummins scored to make it 5-4 in the first half of extra time. And then Lewis Dobie basically rounded the match off with a phenomenal back heel. I'm sure we would discuss that in a wee bit more detail right shortly, but an excellent finish to make it 6-4. Rangers did pull a goal back, but in the end Celtic ran out 6-5 winners, and that's their 16th Youth Cup, which is also a very good achievement. But yeah, was there any, outside of the sort of back heel, Ryan, was there any other moments that stood out to you in the match?
I thought, especially when it came to the second half of extra time, that the big defender, I'm just looking at his name just now, is Agberry. He went off injured, and then he came back on and just started playing up front. There was a moment in the second half of extra time where the two centre backs, one of them was trying to assist the other with a goal, trying to make it, I think it was 7-5 at the time, or he was trying to make it that scoreline. So that was a great showing that even at the end of the game, the defenders were wanting to get in on the act to sort of score goals. But I thought it was a really, really impressive game. Both sides really gave it their all, and there's definitely some talent there in the youth team for the future. I hope some of them make it in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of promising players involved. Mitchell Frame, who's also had 2 goal contributions, the goal that he got, and then he was involved in the build-up to what turned out to be an own goal from one of the Rangers players. He looked very, very impressive. He looked dangerous the way he was taking on his winger. He would be somebody that I would probably wasn't really on my radar before this game in terms of an opportunity for a player to get involved between now and the end of the season. I know there's obviously kind of the B team and the level above that, and maybe they're getting a wee bit more exposure, but he was definitely somebody that I thought it would be interesting if he was to get some sort of minutes between now and the end of the season. It's maybe a point we'll discuss potentially tomorrow when Tony's back on, in terms of Celtic do wrap up the league against Hartlepool. But then the Rangers game obviously to come, but there'd then be 3 games after that, in which could be an opportunity to maybe blood some young talent, which would be interesting to see. And I think he could probably be one of them. Obviously, the big centre back that you mentioned there, Ryan, it was interesting that he came on and went up front. It was like the sort of move that you see happened in the park on a Sunday, to be honest, when they were chasing a goal. It was interesting at that point, given I think Celtic might have been 6-5 up. So I couldn't quite understand why they weren't just seeing it out, but that was
that's not it's good that sort of mentality is getting drummed into the under 18s as well, that we never stop. It's definitely getting feeded through to them too, which is absolutely brilliant, and that's good. It's good preparation for if and when they make it into the first team.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that would sort of kind of tie into what Andrew said before when he was discussing the B team, how, they all basically train the same way. They all train at Lennoxtown. I don't know for definite if the under 18s are always training at Lennoxtown, but so obviously the coaching, from a coaching point of view, that is what's being installed into them, which is ideal, because the whole point of that is when they get up to the first team, obviously they'll be playing with more experienced and better players, but and the intensity and the training will obviously be greater, but not everything will be completely alien to them, because ideally they've been sort of training and playing, maybe in a more basic way, but a similar way, how the first team are lining up, which is a positive. Now, obviously, we couldn't not mention the back heel goal, Ryan. It was a phenomenal finish from Lewis Dobie, and just sort of confidence to have it at that stage, when obviously it was 5-4 to Celtic at that point, and that was a goal that basically sealed the game. But if he does that in that position and it doesn't come off, the keeper saves it, or it goes by the post, he would have, and Celtic then went on to not win the game. It would have probably looked quite foolish. So to have the confidence in his own ability to finish that was phenomenal. I'm sure everybody's probably seen it. The clip, even if you weren't watching the game, was floating about on BBC Scotland's Twitter, and there was a lot of people sharing it. But it was some finish, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was arguably the standout point of the game. It was the audacity to do that in a cup final as well. I know there wasn't as big a crowd as what you get in other cup finals, but the audacity to do a back heel in extra time was absolutely brilliant. It seemed as if the back heel took an age to get in the back of the net too. So you're kind of sitting there thinking, is this going to go in? Is it going in? And thankfully for Dobie, it did. It was good. It was good work down that wing from Luye, Benny Jackson Luye. It was a really good assist from him and a great finish from Dobie. that'll do him the world of good going forward to say that he scored in a League Cup final. So, good for him.
It was he took his goal phenomenally. Fair play to him, like you say. I mean, the exposure as well for the players, obviously playing on television. I'd imagine it'll be one of the first times that they've probably had with that sort of audience. It was quite interesting. I thought to see that, having the confidence to produce a finish like that when there's probably decent amount of people watching the game that aren't in the stadium. It was even more impressive and sort of speaks to the confidence of, you'd imagine, the team at that stage. But it obviously really good. Another victory for Celtic over Rangers. It feels like there's been hundreds of them this season, but sort of all levels. But no, it was really positive to see that. Was there any other players, Ryan, that we've not mentioned that stood out? The only reason I'm asking is one of the commenters here, Kenny Todd,
absolutely,
the Celtic captain, was outstanding. Yeah, he was very, very good. Talking about potentially offering him maybe a loan spell under Scott Brown, and he's touting him as the next Callum McGregor, which is some praise, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know how Scott Robertson would feel about that if he used to go down, and then another Celtic sort of youth player was to go down and take his place. I know he isn't with the club anymore, but yeah, he had a really good performance, a real captain's performance. And I remember Callum McGregor standing out years ago in a Youth Cup final that I went to at Hampden. This is the next sort of step. You're hoping that he can take this opportunity, this player of the match performance that he had, and take that into potentially the B team next season and in the first team in a couple of years. Definitely a real outstanding talent, and I thought he was outstanding for the whole of the game, and he got the trophy to go along with his player of the match performance. So all in all, a very good night for him, you would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact he did sort of clinch that award probably does demonstrate just how well he played. And yeah, in terms of loan moves for these players, it's obviously going to be very difficult for them to sort of break into the first team permanently. Maybe a sort of move up to the B team. We know obviously the B team is going to be a thing next season, and that would sort of be a natural progression from coming through the under 18s. I know there's already players that age that are involved in the B team, but if we could maybe get more from this team involved in that, then I think that'd be something that'd be quite positive to see. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about finding the best fit for these young players and where they're going to get the best sort of progression as their career moves into full-time senior football. If they can get a move maybe in the Championship or League One, then that would be great for them if it's the right fit. But if they can make it into the B team, they're playing every week or sometimes 2 times a week against basically adults, then that would be a good move for them too. I just want to see these players progress and make their way into the first team sooner rather than later. So as much game time as they can is good for them.
Yeah, completely. I mean, obviously the sort of example of a previous Youth Cup final team that went on to sort of provide Celtic with players is, I think it was the 2008 or 2009, Callum McGregor and James Forrest were involved. They beat Rangers at Hampden. I think McGregor might have scored, potentially a hat-trick, and that turned out to be sort of something that ended up giving you one of the sort of best players of recent years and your current captain, and also James Forrest, who's been a phenomenal contributor. So if you could get a couple of players out of this team, 4 or 5 years down the line, you're looking back and going, that was a key moment. I think that sort of would be another good incentive for the next generation again of players that are coming through. So no, it was all positive from that sort of perspective.
Yeah, and I think in the example of Callum McGregor as well, he was 2021 when he made his debut for the Celtic first team. So even if you get to that age, there's still a chance for you. It's just all about timing and luck at that point in your career. So getting that experience at youth team or B team level, and then potentially going out on loan. Obviously, Callum McGregor had that great loan spell out at Notts County alongside Jack Grealish. The two of them have had 2 great careers respectively. But even having a loan deal like that hardens you up as a footballer, and then you come back and you can make the grade at your senior team.
Yeah, I mean, I think people do sometimes forget about the Callum McGregor loan spell at Notts County. That's definitely worth touching on, Ryan. That could be the sort of thing. I know, obviously, one of the commenters had suggested potentially about you maybe going down and playing at Fleetwood. I know you did mention the Scott Robertson thing. They do play a sort of similar role, but it would, I think, potentially maybe the B team for a few some of the players next season, and after that, maybe unless obviously they have an amazing breakthrough and end up in the first team. After that, then maybe potentially a loan, I think could be the option. But it'll be interesting to see, and I think it's definitely put a lot of players on Celtic fans' radar who they maybe weren't thinking about, because, like I say, understandably the B team has obviously had more of a sort of platform. They were involved, or the Celtic version of the B team anyway was involved in the UEFA Youth League, for example. which it was obviously quite highly thought of. So it's completely understandable why they weren't. A lot of these players maybe weren't on the radar, but the fact they've now played on television, I think that is a positive, and yeah, it's good exposure. So obviously, on while we're on the topic of Celtic v Rangers games, which I feel it's kind of all we've been discussing in recent weeks, to be honest. Obviously tonight, Celtic women take on Rangers women. Now Glasgow City won 2-1 last night against Hibs, which put them 5 points clear at the top of the SWPL. But obviously Celtic will have a chance to close that gap back to 2, which it has been for the last couple of weeks if they're able to beat Rangers tonight. Obviously, I know you and Tony earlier in the week, Ryan, sort of discussed the recent victory that Celtic had over Hibernian and how the great job Fran Alonso's doing. Obviously, moving into the Scottish Cup, the Scottish Women's Cup final, chance to win the league for the sort of first time in the SWPL format. But do you think tonight would be another really big psychological step to get yet another victory over Rangers?
Yeah, absolutely. You're just hoping that the confidence that the other versions of Celtic or the other sort of categories of Celtic, the results that they've had against Rangers will filter through to the women's team as well. We could talk about Fran Alonso and his infectious personality all day. It seems as if everybody's a fan of Fran Alonso, especially when it comes to Celtic. I think he's brought a real interest to the women's team. He's got everybody sort of talking about the women's team or talking more about the women's team. And you're just hoping that it's a really good crowd tonight that go and watch the women's team. Hopefully it's a good atmosphere and they get the job done against Rangers, and we can put another result against Rangers, which would be great.
Yeah, of course. I think on the point of Fran Alonso, he's an infectious personality, isn't he? I mean, it's always going to be hard to compete with Ange in terms of, the aura of that Ange has. But Fran Alonso, people have really warmed to him since he came in from that sort of platform of having Celtic in the sort of Champions League qualifiers, then winning the double last season. If they were to win the league, potentially a double this campaign again, and be in the Champions League proper next season, that would be a sort of like natural progression of improvement every year, which you'd imagine sort of managers at every level, that's what they want to see, isn't it? And yeah, some of the football women's team playing has been really impressive this campaign. Obviously, in the last game, it was a 1-1 draw against Rangers, and previously, I think it was a 3-0 victory. So they'll be wanting to sort of get another win, because both teams are obviously taking on each other in the Scottish Cup final at the end of the month, as well as both of them still going for the title with Glasgow City. So that could be another wee psychological edge ahead of the cup final. Celtic could get a win tonight, do you think?
Yeah, I heard that it's been talked about is we've got 5 cup finals left and then we've got another cup final. So yeah, fingers crossed they can get the job done tonight and keep the title race wide open with Glasgow City. It's a big ask. Glasgow City win the league most of the years. They've been sort of a dynasty in women's football for the past, I don't know how many years, it feels like a decade or so. You're just hoping that Celtic can get a good result and then keep that winning run going, and then they'll hopefully challenge Glasgow City for the title.
Yeah, I mean, Glasgow City are the marker in the women's game. I know me, Tony and Sean, we've discussed that before. They are sort of the premier team in that division. They've been in the Champions League before. They've been in the sort of lesser, no, not the lesser Champions League, the sort of earlier stages of the Champions League, not quite, semi-finals of the finals, but I think they've been in the quarter-finals before. So that's right at the top level of the women's game. The fact that Celtic are competing with a side who, all right, maybe not as strong as they have been in previous years, but still doing very well given the fact they're top of the league. It is very impressive. And obviously Rangers, they won the league last year, but they had to go unbeaten to do that, which just shows you how high the standards have been in terms of taking the league away from Glasgow City. So no, it's all to play for. And I've seen a few of the commenters mention there, Celtic are taking on Glasgow City next week at Parkhead. So that will be a sort of massive game. Really, if they win tonight and then they win that, they could potentially go a point clear. So I obviously don't want to talk about that too much, because based off how the game goes tonight, we'll probably do a sort of full preview of that match next week. But just that's a wee thing probably worth touching on, because it is really all to play for, which is really exciting, because we obviously know how well the first team's doing. They've been phenomenal this season, but the fact the women's team have got, like they did at this stage last season when they were also building up for the cup final, which they went on to win as part of a double. The fact they've still got a lot to do is quite impressive, I think, and it speaks to how well Fran Alonso's doing.
Yeah, it's great to see all the sort of iterations of Celtic doing well this season, and you're just hoping that interest then filters through to the women's team. Obviously, he talks about cup finals, talks about the sort of cup finals that we've got to play. Then we've got the actual cup final. hopefully they can do the business on Thursday or tonight. It looks like it's going to be a good crowd, so hopefully they do the business, and then it sets up for a grandstand game next week at Celtic Park.
Yeah, exactly. It sets up for a massive game if Celtic win. Even obviously they want to win every match. Even a draw tonight wouldn't be the worst result, but particularly if they get a win, that sets up for a really, really sort of potentially historic match next week against Glasgow City to go. If they were to win that after winning tonight, a point clear with whatever it would be 2 games left, I think that would be sensational. And yeah, fingers crossed that's what happens. Now, I know just before we finish up, Ryan, there was something you wanted to touch on that you'd mentioned. We had shared it on the Celtic Way Twitter and Facebook last night. It was a photo shoot of Jota wearing a few classic strips.
Yeah, Jota put it on his Instagram last night that he was at. Well, we knew from last week that he was in the Brazen Head, but he sort of made it official on his Instagram with a sort of photo shoot wearing the retro Bumblebee. I don't think there's ever been a player recently that's bought into the club as much as Jota has. I mean, the picture of him with the older Celtic fan looking at pictures, that's just absolutely brilliant. It seemed as if every second person on my Instagram last night was sharing Jota's pictures. So I think we're all in Jota mania at the moment, and long may that continue. You know, he's doing the business on the park. It looks like he's doing it off the park as well, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jota, he's been phenomenal. His numbers speak for themselves. He's probably most people's one of their favourite players, if not their favourite player. And the fact that he does seem to be buying into the club, just makes everybody love him even more, doesn't it? And we already knew, like you say, he'd been in the pub because a few photos had emerged online of him being the only man in Glasgow that could actually look good in the double denim. But the fact we've seen him with the strip on and that he was posting on his Instagram was really great to see. And it's just good that sort of players like that from abroad are getting sort of invested in the club to that extent, isn't it?
Yeah, you love that. I remember even before he signed permanently, he was wearing the hoops over in New York. So it showed you even then, even though he wasn't directly connected with the club at that point, that he was still invested in how the team was doing, and he was still wearing the colours. So he definitely cared about the club. Even just the way he comes across in interviews, you can tell he talks about how he's fallen in love with the club. And as a Celtic fan, you love hearing that. And it really does translate on the pitch as well. You can tell he's enjoying every minute. He loves a photo opportunity when he's scoring goals. His interviews are great. He seems to really get on with the rest of the squad. You've seen that in the video with Aidan Macdonald the other day when they were announcing the Asia tour. So yeah, it's all positives for Jota at the moment, and he looks really, really settled at Celtic, and you can't really ask for much more, especially when it comes to one of your star players, one of your superstars.
No, you can. I mean, obviously, we know players that have sort of came through the ranks. Callum McGregor, James Forrest, that they are steeped in terms of the history of the club just because they've been involved in it for so long. But to see the sort of players from elsewhere that are enjoying the history so much, it's just the sort of factor that Andrew's brought. And, Andrew himself, he's spoken before in press conferences, etc., talking about, how much history means to him and how he wants to learn more and the importance of sort of living up to what's happened in the past with Celtic. So the fact that the players are on that same wavelength is just phenomenal to see. So I probably should have did this before going at the Jota part, Ryan, but did I get you a prediction for Celtic women v Rangers women tonight?
I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory.
3-1, very, very solid. I'll go 2-0, 2-0 Celtic. I think that's both probably sort of fair predictions. We know Rangers are obviously a strong team as well, going unbeaten to win the league last year. But yeah, another victory over them would be a statement of intent, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
So just before sorry Ryan, were you going to chip in?
Anyone will do tonight.
Anyone will do, yeah. That, to be fair, it's getting to that stage of the season for all sorts of levels of the club. It is all just about victories. I would agree. So just before we finish up, guys, just to sort of point you again, if you've down to the ticker tape down below, if you've not already subscribed, our current deal we're on, it's £4 for 4 months worth of access to the site. You can have a look at that if it interests you by visiting www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. As part of your subscription, you'll get access to scouting reports, which will be quite interesting, obviously with the summer transfer window ahead. Tactical pieces such as the one that one of our contributors, Stuart Ross, has got up in the site today, addressing Carol Starfield's understated performance against Rangers in the Scottish Cup semi-final. Tony's match report, or analysis I should say, of the game last night is also available there today. There's also going to be like, calls from people like Kevin McKenna, etc. So yeah, get yourself involved, guys, if you haven't already. And also, just to touch on, the Celtic Way morning briefing is continuing to be sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. SENECA are the #1 hair transplant company in Europe and offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. Their YouTube's down there, their Twitter, their TikTok, as well as actually a link to their website. So get yourself involved in that if you haven't already. Well, Ryan, thanks very much for joining us. It was good to talk today in terms of all different levels of the club, as well as the first team, obviously. So, yep, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, mate.
Thanks very much, guys. Tony, Ryan, and myself will be back tomorrow to obviously preview a massive weekend and hopefully react to a positive result for the women's team as well. Cheers, guys.